28 years ago, a man woke up alone in a devastated London and walked out into the end of the world. That man was Jim, and the thing that ended 1,000 years of British civilization was a virus, what they called the rage virus. It infected you, rewrote your chemistry, and turned you into a vector of bloody catastrophe. It turned Britain into a slaughterhouse, and it spread even beyond those ruined isles. We've known this story since 2002, but here's what we didn't know. The infected were never gone. They were still in there, every single one of them, screaming at a frequency the world couldn't hear, locked inside a body that had been hijacked and weaponized and turned against everything it had ever loved. And in the Bone Temple, an English survivor, a doctor named Ian Kelson, feral and brilliant and keeping himself alive on stubbornness, classic rock, and classical illusions, gives one of the infected, a bestial alpha he named Samson, a pharmaceutical cocktail that miraculously allows the person buried beneath the rage to resurface. And the first word that comes out of that reborn alpha's mouth is moon, a memory, a fragment of the person who used to ride trains and read books, and gaze out the window at the English countryside before it drowned in blood. That single word is a revelation of biblical proportions, because the Bone Temple is not about zombies. It's not just about the brutality of surviving in a tooth and claw world. It's a film about what the apocalypse revealed, about the full spectrum of what human beings are capable of, flayed open and impossible to look away from. And today's video will largely cover three things. We're going to examine what the word apocalypse actually means, because the Bone Temple uses it correctly and most people do not. Not the end of the world, but rather the revelation of what was always hidden beneath it, and how everything in this movie is bent towards the symbolic portrayal of this theme. We will talk about what Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal actually is, because he's not simply a psychopath. He's a system, a political system with a very specific name. And finally, why this film is inundated with biblical imagery, and what that heavy symbolic payload is actually doing in a story about infected people tearing each other to bits in the ruins of Britain. Let's get into it. The word apocalypse comes from the biblical Greek apokalypsis. It does not mean the end of the world. That association came later. It means the lifting of the veil, the revelation of what was hidden. The moment the surface is stripped away and what was always underneath is finally unavoidably exposed. It's why the Book of Revelation is so named, not for the end of all things, but for the revelation of all things hidden. The rage virus was an apocalypse in both senses simultaneously. It ended the world as it was, and it revealed the world as it had always been. The full spectrum of human nature, no longer organized and regulated and contained by civilization, but flayed open for all to see. The virus didn't create anything new in human beings, it exposed what was already there in us. Just think about the characters the film gives us. At one end of the spectrum is Dr. Ian Kelson, a man who has spent years alone in the ruins, building a monument from the bones of the dead. Nobody asked him to. Nobody will see it. Kelson builds the Bone Temple because the dead to him were real, and the act of remembering them still matters, even when the world around him is in ruins. At the other end is Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, a man who looked at the end of the world and decided it was permission. Permission to take whatever he wanted, to call himself whatever he wanted, to do whatever he wanted to whoever was weaker than him, to build a movement around cruelty and try to call it community. And between them is the full range of what human beings are revealed to be when the lights go out forever. This is what the Bone Temple means by its title. A bone temple, an ossuary, is what remains after everything soft has fallen away, the structure underneath the flesh. And the question the film asks, from the first frame to the last, is what that structure actually is. What is the skeleton of humanity? What persists when everything vulnerable has been stripped off? Garland and DaCosta have a specific answer, and we'll get there. But first, let's talk about the prism. Jimmy Crystal's name is not an accident. A crystal refracts light. White light enters one side, unified and simple and all the colors vibrating together, and comes out the other end as a spectrum. Each color separated from the rest, each wavelength revealed for what it always was, hidden inside the apparent purity of the white. The rage virus is that crystal, and Jimmy Crystal is the virus wearing a human face. He is what happens when a human being absorbs the logic of the infection and applies it socially rather than biologically. The rage virus finds hosts, rewrites them, and converts their individual identity into a collective drive to spread. And that's exactly what Jimmy Crystal does, but through coercion, ritual, renaming rather than hemorrhagic contagion. He finds vulnerable survivors. He forces new names upon them, a uniform, a ritual, and a new sense of belonging. And then he uses them up and restarts the cycle. The virus is the prism. The survivors are the spectrum. And what you see when the light comes through depends entirely on which color you're looking at. Kelson is at one end, vibrating at the highest frequency. Jimmy Crystal is at the other, and the rest of the film is everything in between. Alex Garland is very clearly playing with words here and hinting at this meaning. Remember what apocalypse means. Not the end, the revelation, the lifting of the veil, the thing that was hidden finally exposed. The Bone Temple applies that to the body itself, to flesh, to what is underneath it. The Jimmys skin people alive. This is the movie's most horrifying act, and it is not the infected who do it, it's the survivors. Human beings in full possession of their faculties choosing to peel the surface from living bodies as ritual, as proof of dominance. They are forcing the revelation, stripping away the skin, the social self, the thing that makes a person readable as a person, to expose what they believe is underneath. Meat, the animal. The Jimmy's theology, enacted on living beings, is that this is all we ever were, that civilization was just skin, and beneath it, always waiting, is something older and uglier than the Miltonic Satan, that tragic rebel who at least maintained his own morality. What the Jimmys worship is closer to the medieval devil, the grotesque, the hunchbacked thing whose sole purpose is to drag the divine down into the bloody muck. Not rebellion, just viral appetite. Just the pull of the earth on everything that tries to rise above it.
Old Nick. Who the f*** is Old Nick?
Kelson strips flesh too, but from the dead, not the living. And he does it with an entirely different purpose. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. It is one of the oldest meditations in human civilization. The practice of sitting with death directly, as a reminder that the body is temporary and that what we do with the time inside it is the only thing that matters. Every catacomb and every bone chapel ever constructed was built on this same premise, that death, looked at directly, becomes the most powerful argument for meaning that exists. Kelson is building an ossuary, alone in the ruins without an audience, because he believes in meaning and its preservation, even in a world that has stripped away every system that used to enforce it. His work is the moral antidote to the Jimmy's work. Yes, strip away the surface, look at what's underneath it, but go all the way and past the muscle and the blood and the screaming red of what the Jimmys expose. And what you find at the furthest reach of revelation is not just appetite, it's structure. The permanent record of a life. The thing that endures after everything soft and temporary has fallen away. Jimmy Crystal sees flesh as a medium for pain and a means of control. Dr. Kelson sees bone as a record of who we were, monuments to a fallen world. One philosophy produces flaying and the other produces a temple. Both begin with the same act, the stripping away of the surface to find what lies beneath. And that is the apocalypse this film is staging. How people survive and persist in the ruin, how they rationalize the grotesque, how they moralize what would be atrocity in any other world when death is your constant and closest companion. And then there's Samson. Samson's revelation is the most intimate of the three, because the thing that's being revealed is not bone or meat or blood, it's memory. When the morphine begins to work, when the antipsychotics kick in, when the rage recedes enough for the person inside to resurface, what emerges is a fragment of a childhood, a train, a book, the moon, a boy who existed before any of this. The Jimmies reveal the animal beneath the human. Kelson reveals the permanent beneath the temporary, and Samson reveals the person beneath the monster. 3 layers of this apocalypse. 3 answers to the question of what was hidden underneath. There's only us, were Ian's dying words. Most of them. No God coming, no Calvary, no transcendent force waiting to make the suffering meaningful from the outside. There's only what we choose to do with each other. And Kelson chose every single day to strip back the surface and find something worth keeping beneath it. The stubborn insistence that revelation doesn't have to mean ruin. The first word Samson says is moon. A memory, a fragment of the person who used to exist in the body that the infection has been puppeteering for 28 years. And Kelson, who has been waiting for exactly this, sedating this alpha carefully and patiently and at considerable personal risk, hears it and understands what it actually means. That there is still someone in there. Samson's character progression is structured around the phases of the moon. And no, I'm not pulling this analogy out of my ass. The moon is literally his first word in 28 years. The character is explicitly linked to it through memory. And the moon, like the word apocalypse, is about revelation, about what is hidden in the dark and what is exposed when the light returns. In the new moon, full dark phase, Samson has fully been consumed by the virus. The self has set below the horizon, and what remains is pure infection, pure drive, aggression, appetite, and rage. This is Samson as the world has always seen him, a monster of monsters, an alpha, something to be killed before it assuredly kills you. The moon begins to wax, become fuller when the morphine begins to work. Samson's rage recedes. Samson gains the ability to sit still, the willingness to be near a human being without attacking them. This revelation is partial, a sliver of who Samson was, visible at the edge of the infection. Enough to see, but not yet enough to truly reach. But when the moon is full, Samson speaks. He uses language, the most distinctly human thing there is. When the moon is full, the self has returned enough to communicate, to reach across the gap and say a word that means something. This is the major revelation the film has been building towards. The revelation of a specific individual, an irreplaceable human life, buried alive inside a monster for 28 years, still intact, still there, and still dreaming of trains. The tragedy of the full moon is that it cannot stay full. The morphine will wear off, the anti-psych meds may wear off, and then the moon will wane. The question the third film will have to answer is whether Samson himself falls, whether he once more becomes what this fallen world has created, a thing that can tear the head from your body with the ease of popping a grape from its vine. And here is the retroactive horror this revelation delivers to us. Every infected person killed in every film of this franchise, 28 days, 28 weeks, and 28 years, may very well have had someone still there, still in there, just in a dark phase, waiting for a waxing window that never came, because there was no Kelson, because the world was just too busy trying to survive to reach them. Samson will undoubtedly return in the third movie, but whether his moon is dark or bright, well, that's the question the film is asking us to carry forward into the dark. Jimmy Crystal and Samson are the same character viewed from opposite ends. Both are monsters. Both were made by the apocalypse, one by a biological virus that hijacked his body, and one by a social collapse that removed every consequence for insane cruelty. Both had their original selves consumed by something that moved in and took over. And by the end of the film, both are returned to something similar to what they had been before the virus, stripped back to a version of themselves that is almost childlike, one scared and the other full of wonder. The film's deepest structural move is that it gives both of them a foil, a third point on the triangle. Spike. Spike is the child born into the horror. He never had a world to lose. No memories of the old world and what used to be, just the omnipresent horror of the real. His innocence isn't naivety. It's the innocence of someone who was never given the chance to be corrupted by either the rage virus or the civilization that collapsed and produced Jimmy Crystal in its wake. But both systems try to take that from him. The virus would make him an empty vessel for rage, and Jimmy Crystal would make him an empty vessel for Jimmy. Both need his innocence as raw material. Both need to convert it into something that actually serves them. The question underneath all of the blood and the bone is simple. Can innocence survive contact with these monsters? Does Spike come out the other side with his humanity intact? The film doesn't give you a clean answer, but Spike does walk out alive, and in an Alex Garland screenplay, that is never an accident. Jimmy Crystal and his fingers are a fascist movement, full stop. The tracksuits are a uniform. The renaming, every member surrenders their identity and takes a variation of Jimmy, is the erasure of the self into the collective. Jimmy Shite, Jimmy Fox, Inked Jimmy, Jimmy Jimmy. Each member is interchangeable. Each one is a cell in a body that belongs entirely to Jimmy Crystal. The renaming is not just cosmetic, it's the central act. The moment your name disappears is the moment that you disappear. It's why Jimmy couches murder as charity. This inversion of meaning is the fascistic dominance of the lie over the truth. It's doublespeak. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and charity is murder. The violence is not incidental to the project, it is the project. The shared participation in cruelty and murder is the binding mechanism. You can't leave because you are complicit in all the crimes you have partaken in. Your hands are dirty. Links in a chain made of guilt. And Jimmy Crystal lies, just brazenly, directly to people's faces. When he tells the pregnant woman whose settlement he invades that he was brought in rather than broken, the very sharp distinction between guest and invader, he knows the truth. The lie is not a means to an end. The lie is just an exercise of power to force someone to accept a false version of reality and then dare them to contradict you. That is domination in its purest form. Fascism, like the rage virus, is contagious. It brings down the most vulnerable, people who are alone, who are searching for community, and it delivers a degraded and violent version of life. And it's no coincidence that Garland has Cillian Murphy, who's uncredited at the end of the film, teaching his daughter about the origins of fascism. He is the first survivor, and he's passing the warning forward, making sure that the next generation understands what it's looking at. And we, the audience, are also asked to reckon with the co-infections of fascism, nationalism, and hate that are infecting the body politic of our own world in real time. And when Spike and Kelly are pursued by a horde of infected outside of Jim's cottage, Jim, despite personal risk and the risk to his daughter, doesn't hesitate to help. And that's the antidote to the ills of the world. Humans helping humans, strangers helping strangers. Because we are all we have. And our common humanity is more potent and powerful than the rage that would divide us. Jimmy's crucifixion rang a tuning fork in my skull and harkened me back to my Catholic school days. And yeah, I'm a Jew they sent to Catholic school. Why do you think I identify with horror so much? The inverted cross is popularly understood as a satanic symbol, and this fits with Jimmy's brand perfectly. But its actual origin is the cross of St. Peter. Peter, who was Christ's disciple, was crucified upside down at his own request because he considered himself unworthy to die as Christ died. The inverted cross, in its original meaning, is an act of profound humility, of self-obliteration before the divine. Jimmy Crystal's inverted crucifixion is the film having a bit of fun, and it's almost certainly deliberate. On the surface, it reads as the satanic inversion Jimmy would have wanted. the profaning of the divine, the adversary hanging in mockery of Christ's suffering. But underneath that reading is the St. Peter irony, because Jimmy Crystal, who has spent his entire life demanding worship, performing divinity, and styling himself as Sir Lord, dying in the posture of a man who said he is not worthy, that's pretty ironic. The most evilly narcissistic character in the film ends in the most self-effacing position in Christian iconography. Jimmy's crucifixion is the film's final, brutal commentary on Jimmy Crystal. The man who made himself a god died like the man who refused to. And while Jimmy is dying on the cross, he sees Samson as the devil, and this is probably because he was dosed with some psychoactive pocket sand from Kelson during his heavy metal performance. And I don't think that's what the film is trying to say, though. I think what Samson represents in this scene in that moment is something older and stranger than the Christian Satan. I think Samson becomes the Horned Lord, the wild god who appears across pre-Christian mythology in forms like Pan or Cernunnos. Not evil and not fallen, but something that predates the moral Judeo-Christian categories of good and evil. And like Samson, the Horned Lord has always been a creature of the moon. Pan moves at night. Cernunnos is the god of the liminal, the threshold between the tame and the wild, civilization and the forest. The moon is his light. The moon is the light of everything that exists outside of civilization's purview. It does not belong to the town. It belongs to the hunt, to the things that move in the dark beyond the circle of firelight. Samson's first word is moon. His character is structured around its phases. And now the Horned Lord reading snaps more into focus, because the moon is not just a metaphor for his recovery arc, it's his element. It's the light he lives by. The full moon is not just when Samson speaks for the first time, it's when the Horned Lord is fully present, when the wild god stalks in his complete form, not buried in the dark or half emerged into the light, but whole and visible and horrifyingly magnificent. Samson's arc makes this reading kind of unavoidable. He underwent a metamorphosis from human to inhuman before he ever had the chance to come of age, so his innocence is never truly lost. But then he becomes an alpha, the physical pinnacle of the infected, something that can run down and decapitate a full-grown stag, something that absorbs incredible amounts of punishment and keeps going. And then, through Kelson's intervention, he was transformed again, from alpha back to human, from dark to partial to full. And now, arguably, he's peak human. And he's completed a circuit that no other character in the franchise, or in humanity for that matter, has completed. And what he is on the other side of this transformation is not simply a man restored to his humanity. Samson is something new. The perfect union of the social and the feral, the civilized and the wild, man and beast, fully integrated and standing in the full light of the full moon. Jimmy sees the devil in Samson because Jimmy's entire world is organized around Judeo-Christian symbolism, just inverted, corrupted, and weaponized. The devil is the only frame of reference he has for something that transcends him. But Samson belongs less to the Old Testament and more to Ovid, less to scripture and more to myth. He is more pagan god than fallen angel, a figure who has been human, inhuman, and something beyond both of those states, and who carries all three states simultaneously, cycling through them the way the moon cycles through its phases. That is Pan, standing in the full moon and gazing beyond you, beyond the gaseous light of civilization, to a new world, to a new equilibrium between man and beast, forest and civilization. Let's end this where we began. A man woke up alone in a destroyed London and walked out into the end of the world. That guy was Jim, and that was 28 years ago. By the end of the Bone Temple, that same man is in a cottage with his daughter, teaching her about how the world was. The history of the world, the history of fascism, the origins of what went wrong. He is doing what Kelson's Bone Temple does, preserving the record and insisting that it mattered, refusing to meet horror with silence and letting it be repeated because nobody remembered what it was. There's only us, were among Ian Kelson's dying words. Memento mori. No higher power, no cavalry, no transcendent force waiting in the wings to make our suffering meaningful. There's only the people to our left and our right, the choice of what kind of us to be. Kelson chose to build a monument to humanity from its bones, to befriend a monster, to sedate the rage and nurture the human he could still see beneath it. Jimmy Crystal chose to become the infection, and somewhere between them, in a body still learning to be human, Samson said moon and meant it, embraced meaning after 28 years of oblivion, in the purest, most unguarded form of meaning that exists. So the skeleton does persist. The structure endures. The self survives the virus. What the apocalypse revealed is not that humanity is meat. It revealed that humanity is both. Meat and bone, rage and memory. Jimmy Crystal and Ian Kelson and Samson, all points on the same human continuum, all refracted from the same beam of white light. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm Goblinsburg, and there's always a story beneath the story, and I'll see you in the next one.